Week 3 is upon us, and once again, we are back to give you the most accurate picks in all of football. We got a good slate of games this week. A lot of undefeated teams will be undefeated no more after their Week 3 matchups. But starting things off, we've got a dynamic matchup between the lowly New York Giants and the lowlier Cleveland Browns. So Tristan, tell us how that game's going to go.
It feels a little bit of a trap game when it comes to predicting it because I think the Giants have the worst odds out of any team to win this week. That is largely due to how good the Browns' defense is. And I feel least confident in the Giants' ability to compete in this game than I did in their first two games. But when it comes down to it, they're playing against Deshaun Watson, who's battling Daniel Jones for the title of being one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And it is at least conceivable that Deshaun Watson throws 2 pick sixes, fumbles the game away. They still don't have Nick Chubb back and the dynamic threat he brings to the field. So is there a small window where I could see the Giants winning this game? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen?
No.
So, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Giants don't really have much of a shot. I'd expect Daniel Jones to get sacked 5 times. I mean, if he's struggling to get 200 passing yards against a Commanders defense that is not good, what is going to happen against the Browns defense? Nothing.
Unless they quadra-team Myles Garrett, which is definitely in the playbook, he should wreak havoc over there on the right side of the Giants' offensive line. I don't know how much time he spends on top of Andrew Thomas. He's really the only guy the Giants have who could neutralize him one-on-one. But Watson played well for his standards in Week 2, which is still not great. I'm not going to go out of my way to sing his praises. Looked better than Daniel Jones did, playing a much better defense, a much better front seven. If the Browns still have the tackling health issues they did last week, if they can get anyone there in front of the Giants' edges, they'll be fine. They'll win comfortably. If they can't, it'll be more competitive, a defensive rock fight. But I also have the Browns in a game which I don't think will be particularly close.
The Colts are 0-2, and they only have themselves to blame. They should have beat the Packers last week, playing against a team that was starting Malik Willis, and they ran the ball 52 times for 260 yards and destroyed that Colts defense. Anthony Richardson threw 3 interceptions. Now they're playing a Bears team whose defense single-handedly helped them beat the Titans. And the only reason they were in a game with the Texans is because their Bears defense kept them in it when Caleb Williams kept handing the ball back to the Texans, giving the Texans the opportunity to run away with the game. When they're playing a Colts team that could not stop the run, Anthony Richardson has a propensity to turn the ball over. They don't like to run the ball out, even though Anthony Richardson can't throw the ball at a high level yet. So even with Caleb Williams' struggles, I think they're going to run the ball much better against this Colts defense. I think it gives Caleb Williams an opportunity to have his best game of the year, and I think the Colts unfortunately start 0-3.
The Packers gave us the blueprint on how to deal with the Colts. Put 7, 8, 9 guys in the box and make Anthony Richardson beat you with his arm, which right now he just can't do, unfortunately. He's got some deep ball accuracy, he's got talent, but he just can't throw at an NFL level yet. Can't consistently hit crossers, ins, outs. Not a good passer of the football. The Bears are certainly capable of doing that. They're much better than the Packers in terms of the front seven. Better linebackers, better edge play. They've got better cornerbacks who can hang in man. Jalen Johnson can definitely take away Michael Pittman from this game. And I've been very critical of Caleb Williams and the Bears' offensive line, deservedly so. But the Colts don't have a great pass rush. They're not going to be able to really get after him the same way the Texans were. And I think it's going to be smooth sailing for that offense. Caleb Williams, equally capable of beating his own team. Don't get me wrong. He could go out there and throw 3 picks just as well, just malfunction again, try to make something out of nothing. I don't think that happens 2 weeks in a row. I think he finally gets his first touchdown pass. The Bears don't cruise, but crawl to a victory, and everything is kumbaya as the Bears start 2-1.
Well, the Bears have the best unit from either team, which is their defense, so that's largely why I think they win the game.
Speaking of the Bears' defense, they did a great job against the Houston Texans last week. Nevertheless, the Texans persisted. We are seeing 2 undefeated teams face off in Week 3 in Minneapolis, with the Vikings hosting those Texans. And the Vikings' defense is very different than the Bears. The Bears can generate pressure with 4 guys, will blitz occasionally, will blitz plenty, but are not going to blitz at the same rate as the Vikings, who are sending pressure with 5, 6 guys almost every passing situation. They've got better man corners. The Vikings run a zone scheme. They like to protect their cornerbacks, have them clear out, leaving them open to out routes and to curls and comebacks, while the Bears can just kind of lock people up. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I think the Texans should be able to exploit the Vikings defense much better than the 49ers did by virtue of having Nico Collins, who unlike Brandon Ayuk, is in stride, is in step, is playing with an entire minicamp experience, and is a physical freak who can win 50-50 balls over some of the lacking coverage guys in the Vikings secondary. They've also got Stephon Diggs making his Minnesota homecoming, who has made a living off killing zone defenses. Joe Mixon might not play. If he does play, I think he has a similar role to what Jordan Mason did last week. An efficient 84 yards on 12, 13 carries, just pounding it up the middle. We know what that matchup's going to look like. If the Vikings can keep the Texans under 30 points while not letting them just dominate time of possession, I think that is a win for their defense. This is the best quarterback and the best offense Vikings are going to face this season unless they make the Super Bowl. CJ Stroud is better than anyone else in the NFC and anyone else on their schedule. Looking at the Vikings offense, I don't know how Sam Darnold is going to play. We all know the clip of him seeing ghosts. We know he is capable of folding under pressure, and the Texans, as they showed last week, are very capable of sending blitzes, getting pressure, forcing quarterbacks to find the less contested throw, forcing quarterbacks to make the check down, make the right decision with a guy in their face. I don't know what Sam Darnold's going to do with that in Minnesota. I hope he's better than he was in New York and Carolina at dealing with that, but I am not overly optimistic. They're going to keep the ball on the ground as much as they can. They got Ty Chandler. They got Aaron Jones. It's going to be a short game if the Vikings have anything to say about it. When Darnold needs to make those plays, his ability to make them will determine the outcome of the game. If he stands up and effectively delivers the ball under pressure, finds Jefferson, finds Addison, finds Oliver, the Vikings will win. If he doesn't make mistakes, it'll be competitive. But if he sees ghosts, throws the ball into double coverage, turns it over, they're going to get blown out. I'm picking the Vikings because I'm picking them until they lose, and even after that, I'm probably still going to keep picking them. This is going to be a great game one way or the other.
Gonna get the Nick Wright never in doubt tattoo on your arm?
Oh, there's plenty of doubt over here.
Well, the Vikings, sort of shockingly, are 2-0 to start the season.
Shockingly to some.
Everyone probably expected them to be 1-1 with a loss to the 49ers. They got an easy Week 1 victory against the Giants, and then they punched the 49ers in the mouth. But you spoke to it already. The Texans threaten them in a much different way. They have not played an elite trio of wide receivers in either of the two games they've played so far, and they're not going to play this quality of quarterback with this many quality receiving weapons available to him the entirety of the season. So with that being said, I think it's going to be much more difficult for them to create all that pressure when there's more threats they have to worry about down the field, and Nico Collins beating them over the top, Stephon Diggs beating them underneath or over, and then Tank Dell also beating them underneath or over the top. Then there's Dalton Schultz you have to throw in there. You mentioned Joe Mixon's a little...
Dalton Schultz.
Quality starting tight end in the NFL. Don't disrespect him. You mentioned Joe Mixon's a little banged up, so that is something to watch. But even on the defensive side of the ball for the Texans, while the Vikings have the most sacks in the NFL, the Texans have the second most sacks in the NFL. So they haven't faced a pass rush. I know they just played the 49ers like the Texans quite yet, with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson coming off the edge. So given the fact, I think this passing attack is going to give them a lot of problems. I also think Sam Darnold is going to be under a lot more pressure from the Texans' edges. I think the Texans will and should win this one.
I don't think it's a matter of the Texans' edges in a vacuum. The Texans blitz way more than the 49ers. San Francisco is the team which consistently gets pressure with 4 people. The Texans rely on the blitz to get pressure, and that blitz feeds the quarterback back out of the pocket into Will Anderson or Danielle Hunter. Again, I can see this game going either way, and it's going to come down to Sam Darnold's ability to stand up to that pressure. I doubt they blitz him as much as they blitz Caleb Williams. It'd be astounding if they did that, but I remain pleasantly surprised and pleasantly optimistic about the Vikings going forward. I'm not going to abandon all hope if they do wind up losing this game, though.
The next game, Eagles-Saints, it feels like a kind of mini make or break for the Eagles season. I mean, in week 1, they got away with a victory in Mexico against the Packers. And week 2, they disappointed in a major way, were unable to beat the Falcons because of a late Saquon Barkley drop. And then the Falcons marched down the field, scored, and then Jalen Hurts threw another interception to close out the game with an opportunity to win it on a field goal. So a lot of what we've seen so far from the Eagles is some of the red flags we saw towards the end of last season. The defense, 3rd most yards given up in the NFL. albeit just through 2 weeks. Jalen Hurts, just as many passing touchdowns as he has interceptions. So not what you'd like to see from the Eagles, given all the offseason hype, all of the offseason additions. And they're playing a Saints team that is flying around the field on defense. Dennis Allen has them ready to go, better than what we expected, and it's an offense that is averaging 5 yards a carry through 2 games. The Eagles last week, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, could not stop the run. And the Saints, they're going to run the ball. You mentioned it last week. This may be Alvin Kamara's first season where he reaches 1,000 career rushing yards on the year. I think they're going to do that effectively. I think Derek Carr has proven he can push the ball down the field against an Eagles secondary. While to me it looks improved, is still not an elite secondary in the NFL. So I think, unfortunately for the Eagles and their city after the fans riot, they're going to lose this game and fall below 500.
The Phillies are very good right now. They're not rioting 3 weeks into the NFL season. The secondary is improved with the exception of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who just keeps getting burnt and burnt and burnt on the biggest plays of the game for whatever team he's playing against. You spoke about their run defense. The Eagles' run defense is better than the Cowboys and better than the Panthers. Much better? I don't know, but it's certainly better than those two. Kamara's not going to be as dominant on the ground as he was in the first 2 weeks. What it comes down to is if A.J. Brown is healthy or not. The injury report says he might miss 2 weeks, but as we saw with Christian McCaffrey, NFL teams lie. If A.J. Brown isn't there, Hurts is just going to be running around in the backfield behind that Eagles O-line, waiting for Devontae Smith to get open again like he was against the Falcons. If A.J. Brown is there, they'll have some structure. They can hang in the pocket, throw the ball, avoid those interceptions, actually move it through the air a little bit. It's going to come down to if Brown plays or not. If Brown plays, the Eagles offense can match a diminished Saints offense who will not be keeping up their pace through the first 2 weeks. If he doesn't, they're going to struggle to score, struggle to do anything, and lose the game.
Something the Saints have done at a high level over the first 2 weeks, they have 4 interceptions as a defense and are creating pressure. So we've seen Jalen Hurts make mistakes already. I think he's probably going to have 1 or 2 again this week.
I mean, the problem with the 2 week stuff, it was against Bryce Young in week 1. We don't need to get into that. And one was a good pick on Dak. Another one was desperation time, kind of like Jalen Hurts' pick against the Falcons, where he's just trying to make something happen, which isn't there late in the game. So I don't know how valid we want to consider those 4 picks or not.
It is a lot different making predictions based on what we've seen so far in week 3 versus when we're in week 8 having 7 weeks of information.
Oh, one way or the other. Dennis Allen, get the Chinese dictionary out. Give me the Eagles if Brown plays. Chargers, Steelers. A much more compelling game than we thought it was going to be at the start of the season. Both these teams are undefeated. Unfortunately for the Steelers, though, their trip through Candyland ends here. They have to play a real NFL offense who is dominant on the ground, who is not the Broncos, who is not the Falcons in week 1 when Kirk has no confidence in his leg. They're going to have to stop the run against a good O-line, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it. I think the Chargers are going to march up and down the field. This might be more of a Gus Bus game than a J.K. Dobbins game. A 4 yards and a cloud of dust type running attack. Dobbins will have his spots, sure, but the Chargers are going to pound it up the middle. Offensively, the Steelers, not great. Not making mistakes. It's the best thing you can say about him. Harbaugh is giving them a much bigger challenge with what he is sending at them defensively. He's going to get pressure, make Fields make those mistakes he was synonymous for in the first few years in Chicago, and is going to force the first turnover out of this Pittsburgh offense. And that will ultimately be enough in a short, run-heavy game. Give me the Chargers on the road in Pittsburgh to pull off the upset.
I think both of these teams are trying to play mistake-free football. You'd probably give the edge to the Steelers' defense, albeit the Chargers' defense has been really good, but neither of them have played to the more widely
they played
viewed.
the Panthers. They played the Raiders. I understand. The people at home get it.
Both of them haven't played great teams yet, and you'd favor the Steelers defense. Chargers defense still has looked very good. When it comes to comparing the two offenses, I think you'd probably rather have the Chargers running backs, given the fact Jaylen Warren isn't completely healthy yet, the way they've been running the ball. And when you compare the two quarterback situations...
Come on now.
I think you would much rather have Justin Herbert than have Justin Fields.
If you combine the best traits of Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, you still wouldn't have Justin Herbert.
Exactly. And at that point, that's what's going to win you the game. Justin Fields hasn't made a back-breaking mistake through the first 2 weeks, and one of those is going to happen. That's going to open up the opportunity opportunity for the Chargers, not necessarily to run away with it because their offense has been largely predicated on the run and not necessarily putting up 40 points through the air, but I think the Chargers are going to make less mistakes. They're going to run the ball more efficiently, and I think they're going to win the game.
A third Quentin Johnston touchdown reception would be a thing of beauty. I am looking forward to. Not optimistic about giving Porter and Fitzpatrick's presence in the secondary, but a man can hope. I ask myself the same question every week with the Broncos. Are they still starting Bo Nix? Yes, the Broncos are losing this week. The Buccaneers are smoking them. It's not going to be close. It's going to be Zach Wilson time soon. I don't need to give you a deep, in-depth analysis. I'll save that for my co-host. Bo Nix is losing.
I don't hate Bo Nix as much as he does. I think he can be a solid quarterback in the NFL. I'm not quite drinking all of that haterade, but there's no chance they win this game. I mean, the Buccaneers last week, I think we spoke to a little bit how they were a little bit lucky to get out of there with a victory. And against the Commanders have a really bad defense that allowed Baker Mayfield to shine. But the Broncos have a rookie quarterback. Not really any talent on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is not all that great. The Buccaneers have a bunch of veterans that have played together before. They've won a playoff game. They're at home in Tampa. So if they lose this game, this is one of my locks of the week. We're talking about, locking in games. This is a lock of the week.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you can score 20 points on a Lions defense, which got better in the offseason as sacking Baker Mayfield 72 times, you can score at least 25 on Denver, and 25 maybe twice as much as you need to beat this Broncos team. Maybe even 3 times as much as you need to beat Denver. Sad state of affairs over there in Mile High Stadium.
Next up, we have the Packers versus the Titans, and Malik Willis deserves a lot of credit for the Packers being able to get a victory against the Colts last week. He was efficient, only had 2 incompletions, and he was part of that rushing attack that put up over 260 yards. I feel like I've mentioned that a million times. But this week against the Titans, we have Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons on the interior, a defense that is very good, one of the best defenses in the NFL from what we've seen or have available to us so far. They're not going to allow that Packers team to run for 260 yards. And at that point, you're asking Malik Willis to probably throw the ball at the minimum 20 to 25 times. And when you're asking him to do that, I don't think it's a game the Packers can win. And I would favor Will Levis in that type of matchup, even though we've seen he's a propensity to just hand 7 points to the other team. So I would pick the Titans to win this one, as much as I don't like Will Levis. If Jordan Love happens to play, that's kind of been thrown out there, I would pick the Packers. But assuming Malik Willis is starting, I'd pick the Titans.
There's no way Jordan Love is playing with that MCL injury. The Packers are lying to you. He is still 3 weeks away from being ready. The Titans are essentially the Colts with a better defense. A very talented offense, a lot of good receivers, good running back. Titans have better receivers, Colts the better running back, who is being held back by a quarterback who makes boneheaded decisions at times. Will Levis is starting to become one of my favorite players as someone who does not care at all about the Tennessee Titans. He keeps you on the edge of your seat. Every snap is an adventure when Will Levis drops back. I think he's been chewed out enough in the past week and by the media, by his coaches, to not have one of those boneheaded decisions 3 weeks in a row. He'll get one in week 4, not week 3. It's a better version of the Colts. That Colts team only allowed the Packers to score 16 against them. I'd be surprised if they got 16. And I feel like the Titans offense, with the talent they have, can get at least to 20. So give me the Titans in this one, and hopefully a mistake-free Will Levis performance. On to Las Vegas, and the only hope the Carolina Panthers have is if they get that morale boost from having a new quarterback come in there and start for them. But I'm not optimistic. Leaving aside quarterback, Carolina is worse at every single position than Vegas. Terrible O-line, terrible D-line, weak secondary, weak receiving weapons in comparison to Vegas, terrible tight end play in comparison to Vegas, and the Raiders have a much better rushing attack with Zamir White than the Panthers have had through the first 2 weeks, as low as I am on Zamir White. So unless Dalton pulls out some real grade A magic, which I am skeptical given his situation, the Panthers are getting smoked in this one. This is not going to be one of those games we need to discuss greatly in depth. I'll call it a lock for the sake of it. I feel very confident the Raiders are going 2-1 and winning this game.
Even if Andy Dalton kind of gives that offense a boost after they've been beaten down over the first 2 weeks by the media and just looking back on their own performance, he doesn't bring Derek Brown back. He doesn't make their defense all of a sudden good. He doesn't make their interior offensive line start to block anyone. So it's not going to make the totality of the Panthers all of a sudden a better team. And he mentioned all the places the Raiders are better. The competent quarterback, much better receiving weapons, a defense that has one of the best players in the NFL rushing the passer, and one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL. So the Raiders should win this one unless David Tepper...
Tepper goes under center somehow.
He mysteriously, suddenly disappears.
Little blood pact, perhaps. Tepper sacrifices his life to get the Panthers a win. I kind of think they're benching Bryce Young, not to let him watch the game because he's been so bad, which he has been, because they just don't want to see Max Crosby rip that poor little guy's head off. Oh, bless him. It's going to be a long season in Carolina.
Dolphins, Seahawks. I never advocate for a team to tank, but I think this is one where the Dolphins may look at this season. They see Skylar Thompson starting at quarterback, even if Tua decides to keep playing and to continue his career. You can't rely on him to stay healthy, and they're going to need a quarterback to continue running that offense with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle being already paid as their receivers. But I don't think they really have much of a chance to win this game. The Seahawks, I know their victories aren't all that impressive. They went to overtime with the Patriots. They beat the Broncos and Bo Nix in week 1, and it was also still a closer game than you would like. But comparing them to the Dolphins, they have a veteran quality quarterback. They have very good receiving weapons. If Kenneth Walker is able to step on the field, they have a very good running back. I like him a lot more than I like Zach Charbonnet. Their defense has been very good under Mike McDonald, and I think they will win this game. JSN also establishing himself as a better, I'm not going to say top 20 or top 10 yet, but one of the better receivers in the NFL.
You're not going to egregiously overrank him because you liked him coming out of college. That's very nice of you. The Zach Charbonnet hate is unnecessary. He played very well last week. So
I don't hate him, but I think Kenneth Walker is...
Let's be serious about that for a second, please. The Seahawks are one of those 2-0 teams you look at sideways. You think, I don't really know. I mean, I guess. They're not going 4-0. I guarantee you that. The 12th man, a lot quieter this year. I don't know if you've been tuning into many of those games. Crowd ain't really a factor anymore. That noise-amplifying stadium, not so loud. You compare it to an Arrowhead Stadium, a real loud venue. I don't know. I just don't know. You take a look at the Dolphins. You say, okay, they don't have a quarterback right now. They still have Devon Achane. They still have Tyreek Hill. They still have Jalen Waddle. You look at the Seahawks. You say, okay, this is a defense which, despite having talent, has shown a lack of ability to stop the run outside and is susceptible to deep, long balls. So I think, yeah, you got a problem with that, son? Got a problem with my long ball talk with Skylar Thompson? Let's talk about those long balls. I think Skylar Thompson hits one of them. I think that's all he needs to do. He had one of them against the Bills in the playoffs when he came in and started. I think he can do that again against a worse defense in Seattle. I think they can keep the ball on the ground, stay away from the middle, stay away from those linebackers, get outside, make the cornerbacks and the safeties make tackles in space, and keep that clock moving. As for the Seahawks offense, I'm not optimistic about it. I am low on Geno Smith. I think we are closer to a quarterback battle in Seattle than many Geno Smith truthers might want to admit. Sam Howell did not get brought in there to be a backup. He's not just a Drew Lock replacement. I am taking the Dolphins with whatever quarterback they roll out there to beat the Seahawks on the road, traveling all the way from Miami to Seattle in a massive upset.
Like I said, I ultimately think the Seahawks win. The one caveat that I did not quite get to say is if we get a Devon Achane where he breaks a 60-yard touchdown or 60-yard screen, we get 2 of those and another Tyreek Hill big play touchdown. The Seahawks offense hasn't quite shown to be overly explosive yet, so that's where I could see the Dolphins squeak out a victory. A couple big play touchdowns, maybe defensive stop, giving them a short field, getting a field goal, but I still would pick the Seahawks to win.
I mean, I don't know if I'm calling it squeaky out a victory if you've got multiple 60-yard runs. That kind of feels like a convincing victory to me. But speaking of convincing victories, Detroit has not had one of those yet this year. Played a competitive game against a diminished Rams in week 1, lost to the Buccaneers last week, in large part due to Jared Goff not being able to step up throw touchdowns, deliver the ball when he needs to, and really putting it in the defense's hands. You flip that over. The Cardinals lost a nail-biter in Buffalo, admittedly closer than it should have been due to a kickoff return touchdown. I don't think we'll be seeing too many of those this season. And they beat in convincing fashion that very same Rams team, albeit one which was a lot more injured in week 2 than it was in week 1. So the casual at home might be inclined to pick Arizona to pull off the upset. Not me though. I am riding with the Lions. That Lions offensive line is a completely different animal than the 2 rushing attacks the Cardinals have experienced through the first 2 weeks of the season. They're going to road grid them. They're going to pound it up the middle in ways the Bills and the Rams simply could not do. On the vertical side of the ball, I have faith in Goff. I said he was a top 10 quarterback going into the season. I'm not ready to give up on him. I think he is going to bounce back in a big way. Hit Amon-Ra, hit Williams, hit Laporta for the first time in the end zone. Make things happen through the air. I just don't think the Cardinals are going to be able to keep up. I know they scored a lot last week on some Marvin Harrison Jr. touchdowns, but they are a run-first team who struggles when they are trailing big in games. So give me the Lions, take an early lead, and not let it go this week.
The Lions are favored in this game, as they should be. They are more talented, they are more established, they have more experience, and if they play the way we know they can, that they showed last season, they will win this game. But we have not seen that this year. They barely beat a Rams team in overtime that was dilapidated by injuries throughout the course of the game. Last week, they faltered against the Bucs and lost that one. And we have this Cardinals team that barely loses to the Bills, was beating them a majority of the first half, and then last week, they blow the Rams out of the building. And for this Lions defense that dominated Baker Mayfield last week, Aiden Hutchinson had 4.5 sacks. Kyler Murray is not as easy to sack as Baker Mayfield is.
I don't know, man. Baker was kind of scrambling a little bit that game. He was roaming. He was getting after on the ground. He scored the go-ahead touchdown.
He was getting a little jiggy with it.
He's that Oklahoma guy, man. I don't know. Those Oklahoma quarterbacks under Stinking Lincoln's system, they're a little more similar than you'd like to admit.
But he's
sneaky athletic. Kyler's just athletic.
He's not as shaky as Kyler is. And Kyler's going to be juking in and out behind his offensive line. You can't really quite see him when you're rushing the passer.
Hasn't worked for Bryce Young yet.
Next thing you know, he's running around the outside, running back, throwing the ball deep down the field. So I think that's going to pose a unique challenge for the Lions defense that they haven't played quite yet. And on the defensive side of the ball for the Cardinals, with Jonathan Gannon, I said it about the Saints, but he has them flying around the field. They've been playing at a very high level, and I think that will be enough, combined with the unique challenge Kyler Murray is as a scrambler and as a passer, for the Cardinals to win this game.
Look, I don't mean to make an inference based off the first 2 weeks. It's hard to get a good read on things. They've played one competent offense, and that one competent offense, despite turning the ball over in a strip sack, scored 33 points, I believe. I don't know if I'd say flying around. You want me to praise you for beating up the hospital LA Rams? Big whoop. I'm not moved by that. I would pump the brakes on the defensive praise of the Cardinals.
Well, the first week, they did very good in the first half, and then both of ours MVP pick dominated in the second half and scored 4 touchdowns.
I would say it was more so the Bills doing bad in the first half than the Cardinals doing good, but we don't need to get into Arizona discourse right now.
The Cowboys gave up 190 rushing yards to the Saints, and now they're playing a Ravens team that against the Raiders, while they did lose, they averaged over 5.5 yards a carry. The Cowboys, they're not going to fix their run defense in a week. They didn't fix it in the offseason from 2023 to 2024. And we get a Ravens team that from week 1 to week 2, we saw Derrick Henry worked into the offense much better. It was much more efficient. It made a little bit more sense. And it's going to look even better in week 3 with him in that offense against a team that doesn't really have an interior defensive line that is capable of stopping the run. So I think the Ravens, with a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth from losing to the Raiders last week, and they're playing a team that has the ability to be exposed in the run game. They're going to feed Derrick Henry. They're going to be much more efficient with their play calling. I think we're going to see them gel even better. Micah Parsons is not going to get to Lamar, and I think the Ravens go into Jerry World and they beat the Cowboys.
You talk about a sour taste in your mouth, letting the Saints score 49 on you or whatever it was. That's a little bit humbling. That's going to make you bitter. Micah Parsons said it in the post-game interview. That one was not on the defensive scheme. That was on the safeties letting guys get behind them and run free. That was on guys not properly sealing the edge. I just can't imagine it is that bad defensively. They looked that inept 2 weeks in a row. Cowboys, very good at home. Undeniable. One of the best records in the NFL at home in the past 5 years in the McCarthy era. The Ravens have not shown the ability to take away a team's number one receiver. Rashee Rice, free will against him in week 1. Devontae Adams had a great game against him last week. And I think CeeDee Lamb is clearly better than both those guys. Maybe you want to call Rashee Rice a mini CeeDee Lamb as I have in the past. The real one's going to do worse. He is going to do some meaningful work against this Ravens secondary. We might see 150, 160 yards. That is going to open some stuff up. That is going to maybe get Cooks more involved in the offense. I'm not going to be optimistic about the ability to run the ball. I'll be straight up about that. Rico Dowdle, Zeke, and Dalvin Cook still just can't move me. But I think it is a higher scoring game than you are giving the Cowboys offense credit for generating. And in high-scoring games, we have seen multiple times Harbaugh abandons the run. He tries to turn Lamar into something he isn't, a pocket passer. He takes Henry out of the game. He makes him throw it 30 times, and that is how you beat this Ravens team, particularly throwing against this Cowboys pass defense, which we think will be good. Obviously, the first 2 weeks, not great, but we think this Cowboys team is going to have a great passing defense. So, I think the Cowboys, surprising a lot of people, win at home in Jerry World, avoid the 1-2 start, and the Ravens are going to have to ask themselves some hard questions because 0-3 is a big hole to dig yourselves out of.
I think on the Cowboys side of things, Jake Ferguson, it's not quite clear if he'll play yet. If he's not on the field, it has become more evident than ever the lack of depth the Cowboys have at wide receiver. It's really only CeeDee Lamb running around out there. The backfield, extremely weak. I just don't think the Cowboys have enough talent on offense, even if it's a home game, for their defense to overcome that rushing attack and then for their offense to put up enough points to win.
They scored 33 on the Browns. They're not slouches. I think making a judgment, they only got the ball to CeeDee Lamb against the Saints is not what we should do going forward. I have a lot of faith in this Cowboys team in the regular season. The regular season is the important part of this. We talk about the Cowboys occasionally having stinkers. They rarely string 2 of those stinkers together. It's not back-to-back weeks. Bunch of things make me want to pick the Cowboys. I'm picking the Cowboys, mainly because I knew you'd pick the Ravens, and I just don't want us to have the same picks once again this week. Speaking of the same picks, though, I don't think we need much discourse on this next one. The 49ers are dealing with some injuries. Debo's going to miss some time. CMC obviously hasn't played yet on the IL. They are playing the Walking Dead in LA. No one on that Rams team besides Stafford is healthy, and Stafford's never really healthy. He's just tough enough to tough it out. It's going to be a home game for the 49ers. That stadium is always filled with red jerseys, no matter who is playing, and I just can't imagine the Rams offense getting more than 10 points against that 49ers defense, which has its stars. And I can't imagine the 49ers offense with Kittle, with Ayuk, with Juice, with Jordan Mason, not just walking up and down the field on this Rams team. Not a competitive game. Give me the 49ers.
I don't need to spend much time on it. I really like the Rams heading into the season. I wish they were healthy, but if they're healthy, I think I'd pick them to win this game, but that's not the case, so 49ers are going to win. The Chiefs are taking on the Falcons, and the Falcons were kind of lucky to get away with a victory against the Eagles. If Saquon Barkley catches that ball, if the Eagles defense is competent, they don't move the ball down the field. The box score looks a whole lot worse for their offense, and they're starting the season 0-3 because they're losing this week to the Chiefs. Bijan Robinson has looked fantastic. He has been very efficient carrying the ball. Somehow, even with the deficiencies they have at quarterback with his mobility right now, he has not gotten 20 carries in either of the first 2 weeks, despite the quality of their offensive line and how good Bijan is. So when they're playing a Chiefs team that is a much better defense than they played last week in the Eagles, and the Chiefs have the ability, much in the same way the Eagles do, to put up points quickly, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Falcons to win this game. They haven't shown that they're committed to running the ball 40 times and passing off of that. So I think the Chiefs will win. I know Pacheco's out. I know Marquise Brown isn't coming back until the playoffs, but I think the Chiefs will win.
Bold of you to assume they're making the playoffs. You're wrong, and I'll tell you why, because momentum is a hell of a thing in the NFL. Say what you want about the first 2 weeks of the season. What matters are those last 2 drives. Falcons driving to length of the field. Game-winning touchdown to Drake London. And that secondary, which is one of the most talented, if not the most talented secondary in all of football, picking off Jalen Hurts late. This team is on fire right now. This is a team which is emotional, young, lives and breathes off momentum, and they are rolling into the Chiefs game hot at home. I think they're going to score points. They're going to move the ball better on the ground and through the air than they have all year. Kirk Cousins looked like a completely different quarterback from week 1 to week 2. The score might not reflect that, but if you watch those games, you know he is much more confident under center in the play action game and throwing off that injured leg. He was not the same guy against the Steelers as he was against the Eagles. Over on the Chiefs side, they have lived and breathed off Isaiah Pacheco's production the past 2 years. He's how they win games. He's how they won playoff games. Them being able to beat you on the ground, establishing the run with a firm, hard-nosed runner who doesn't turn it over a ton, opened up so much more for this offense, which was relatively weak at receiver last year, and due to injuries is kind of making its way back to being relatively weak again. Kelsey's old, man. I don't know too many ways to say it. He is getting up there. He is less effective by the day. Xavier Worthy, we saw what he looks like when he does not get gadget plays and blown coverages. Had 20 yards last week against a Bengals secondary, which is far worse than this Falcons team. The only receiving threat on that team of serious note is Rashee Rice, and I think they've got the guys to handle him one-on-one. The Chiefs' offense is going to struggle to move the ball against the Falcons. Unless their backup running backs, I don't know which one they're rolling with. Maybe Kareem Hunt has a 200-yard game.
You tell me you don't believe in Carson Steele?
I don't know what
the
Carson
Great
Steele
White
is.
Hope.
Why is his race important, Tristan?
It's not.
Yeah, I think
You
it
don't
is.
see white running backs a lot.
Well, the
outside of
best
Christian
running back in the
McCaffrey.
NFL is white, so maybe keep your honky mouth shut, crack.
Oh my God.
I will not finish that hateful word. I don't think the Chiefs' offense is going to be very effective. They've not been particularly effective the first 2 weeks. They're not going to crack 30. And the Falcons' offense coming into this game hot, I think they get there. I think they pull off the upset at home and send the Chiefs back to Arrowhead with their first loss of the year. The Jags-Bills is one I don't need to spend a ton of time on. Joshua Hines-Allen has historically owned Josh Allen. That's the one way the Jaguars win this game. If they can get a ton of pressure with him and Walker, then maybe they've got a shot of keeping the Bills under 20 points and winning this game. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Allen is used to the pressure, has better receivers, a deeper receiving room than he has in previous years, and I think the Jags offense is so uninspiring, they will not be able to win any shootouts they get into this year. Trevor Lawrence is the only one who seems to care once again. Maybe he's got bad aura, bad energy, bad clubhouse presence, whatever. I don't know what the reason is. I just know they can't move the ball, and I'd be shocked if that changed in week 3. Give me the Bills going away, one-sided affair in the first Monday night game.
I cannot believe I did it to myself again. I trusted Trevor Lawrence, and I have him on 2 of my fantasy teams.
I don't think it's Trevor Lawrence's fault. Like, you look at the sideline, everyone else is dead over there, man.
The whole team's uninspiring, but his play is uninspiring. He looks like Daniel Jones' slightly more talented younger cousin, a little bit more talented, getting paid, $15 million more a year or whatever it might be. I don't believe in the Jaguars offense until they show the ability to put up 30 points a game, to compete in a shootout with a team like the Bills, throw the ball up and down the field, get the ball out to Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas. Evan Ingram also is injured and isn't playing this game, so they lost a dynamic tight end threat. And I just don't believe in them. I think the Bills will win. This game is at home, and the Jags haven't showed us that they have turned a leaf from some of the red flags and poor quality of play we saw last year.
Yeah, not too much. Unless a Tank Bigsby masterclass is about to unfold before our eyes, it's over for him.
Last game of the video. If Baker Mayfield is able to throw for close to 300 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Commanders, and Daniel Jones is able to throw for 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, doesn't quite get over 200 yards against the Commanders, Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase, who hasn't had a big game yet, T. Higgins might be playing, he's going to go for 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, and the Commanders are going to get blown out of Cincinnati.
I don't know why you put the Joe Burrow disrespect in there to start. If the season ended today, him or Derek Carr is winning the MVP.
Joe Burrow disrespect.
The Baker Mayfield disrespect in there. The season ended today, Baker's winning the MVP. Oh, Baker Mayfield only threw for 300 yards. Joe Burrow's not going to be able to match Baker Mayfield's performance. If Joe Burrow dreams of being as productive as Baker Mayfield, he better wake up.
If that's the take you're going to go with, either way, I expect the Bengals to dominate. Maybe Jaden Daniels continues to look like the best rookie quarterback this season.
The bar is low.
The Bengals win in dominant fashion while we hopefully see some more Jaden Daniels flashes.
The only reason Jaden Daniels is not going to be the first rookie to record a passing touchdown is because this game is on Monday night. The second game on Monday night. Why? Because the NFL is a bunch of greedy, money-hungry scumbags who can't just put a bunch of games in the 4 p.m. window and have to try and milk every little ounce of attention they can out of us. I digress. I think the Bengals will win. Them starting, I predicted the Ravens to lose. Imagine both the Bengals and the Ravens start 0-3.
And you have the Steelers at the top of the division.
You have the Steelers lording over the division at 2-1 or 3-0 if they somehow beat the Chargers, and the Browns 2-1. That's a lot. That is a lot of ground. The bottom two will have to make up there. I'm picking the Bengals to win, but I'm kind of hoping the Skins got it. I am optimistic now.
And then the Commanders would be at the top of the NFC East.
Fun first 3 weeks of football.
That has been our Week 3 predictions. Let us know some of your predictions down in the comments below. If you want to check out Underdog, use code Thicc. Doubles your deposit up to $1,000, I believe still. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.